So then I'm going to bring Randall in there, but before I do that, Randall, I've got a slide so everybody knows who you are. Is there? I've used your North Shropshire, your North, well, you know what, your website, your no nationalization of our kids um, website, so that because I know you have a lot of articles in there. If there's any other details you want to put into the chat, I can share them on the YouTube video as well, if you want anything else added there. So let me just spotlight you. And um, what we've been doing today, Randall, is having like a really good positive chats about all aspects of home education. We've had Lord Way come in, we had Graham Stewart come in, we had TikTokers come and join us. And it's just been really fun just to kind of get that whole overview and hear from lots and lots of different people. But Randall is one of also like a veteran of the home ed movement, children grown up. But like most of us, once you get a hold, this home education thing gets a hold of you, you can't just let it go. Um, and I think I would like to just ask Randall is like, why are you still here?
Because I'm sick of the punishment. No, it's not just that. Look, let me say from the start, it's nice not to be the first home ed dad on something like this, but I might be pushing as the first home ed granddad that you've had today. So that might be my
Yeah.
one claim to fame. I'm not sure whether amongst your guests I'm not or not, but I'm probably the oldest person you might have had as well. I'm not sure, but
We had
a,
Ross
a couple,
Mountney. I don't know what age Ross Mountney is, but
well,
she's a grandparent as
uh,
well. So,
yeah, I said granddad.
oh, okay. So sorry.
The connection with
You
was
said
with
you're the
dad.
oldest person. You might be the
I
oldest
might be
person.
the oldest, but I don't know. I was
Yeah.
born in 1951, so
Yes,
if anybody,
we won't ask Ross when she was born. So,
no, that's fine. So I've been dipping in and out as the day's gone on, and that's given me one or two thoughts. But if there's anything you want to start with, Juliet, um,
well, I think
happy to do so.
I think
Any
people would.
holes that have been left through the day that you want to see if we can fill?
Well, before we do that, I think it is good for people to know, who you are, because some people might not know who you are. You are very, very involved in the homemade community, doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes and just quietly getting on with it. Um, but very important stuff that you're doing as well, I think, in terms of the people you're talking to, um, and how you are trying to help effect change. So I would just love it if you talk a little bit about just, your own homemade journey briefly, and then why you feel so passionately. As I said, why are you still here?
Okay,
And I mean that
well,
in the best sense possible.
we stretch back. Um, we encountered home education in the 1990s. Um, we had been planning to send our children to a school, just like everybody else did. We ended up discovering there was a parents' cooperative school nearby, where they didn't so much charge fees, you gave what you could to the joint effort, and we felt that was the right thing to do. So our oldest three children went there, and they went all the way through that till they reached done their GCSEs and were ready to go off to sixth form. But partway through that time, the family whose home that school was based in um, mentioned this strange thing called home education. And the more we looked into it, the more we thought that's a better fit for us than school. So with our youngest three children, they were all home educated. But that doesn't get me here today. What really did was a gentleman called Ed Balls. Ed Balls was the last Labour Education Secretary before Bridget Phillipson. And as has been mentioned already today, in 2009, he invited his friend Graham Bradman. I think Fiona said it. Bradman kept trying to tell us all it was an independent review. Yeah, well, he was a good friend with um, Ed Balls, and he also held a post on the board of UNICEF in the UK, a United Nations organization, which I think is very much, that area is one area that maybe we'll touch on later. But Graham Badman came along, he did his review, and Ed Balls put forward the Children's Schools and Families Bill, which again you've talked about, because that's when Graham Stewart got involved with things, and as an MP. And it was also when I got introduced to the political world full on. We decided that we would get involved in the fight to protect home education. And we went, first of all, we volunteered to collect petitions in North Shropshire, where we moved to fairly recently. It was just our youngest child who was being home educated then, and I think he was about 14 or something like that, maybe a bit younger, 12, I don't know. But we got involved, and we ended up going down to London for the mass lobby, and we watched the late night session of the presentation of petitions to Parliament, and our MP was amongst those who spoke. So that was how we got involved in this side. But by the time Graham, sorry, I forgot the name of Ed Ball's boss, Prime Minister Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown lost the general election in 2010. I had this strong conviction that people need not go back to sleep and think we've won it. I think it was Fiona who said earlier that they noticed, first of all, in 2004, 2005, that there was getting a negative narrative about home educators as problems. And the earliest document I found is a thing called the Iverts report, which was into Gypsies, Romney and Traveller community and home education. And that's the first document I can find where there's a call for a register. So it was about that time it had begun to brew, but I hadn't encountered it till 2009. But I knew in 2010 that this would not go away. But I discovered that my words were not actually being taken seriously by home educators. I did have a conversation some years ago with Mike Wood, and we compared notes, and both of us had the same experience on that. Mike Wood, who many will remember, was also somebody who was telling people, don't sit back and relax, it's coming back. And 2015, it did, with Michael Wilshaw, the head of Ofsted, trying to say it was a cover for people attending legal schools. He wouldn't name it, but as I'm sure Sarah, one of your early contributors today, would have acknowledged, he was really getting at the Muslim community. He never said that, but that's the people who are in his crosshairs, but he wanted to encompass the whole of home education. Under his influence, and afterwards the Conservatives who'd been on our side in 2009, 2010, flip-flopped and started getting soft. 2017, 2018, they didn't jump on Lord Soley's private members bill, with the result that they, in 2018, put forward a consultation, which, as far as I can see, changed the landscape. The guidance that came out in 2019 was a sleight of hand and changed the landscape. And by now, the guidance itself should have been challenged in the courts. The opportunity we had, it wasn't done. We may have to go back to that fight. But now we're really getting into an intense period. And yep, I'm still here. How much longer? I really don't know. What I do feel, and maybe somebody would come in with some questions or something. What I really do feel is the phase we're going into, if this so-called children's well-being and schools bill, or as I've rechristened it with the help of Michelle, the children's surveillance and woe bill, goes through, the big change is going to be that no third party is going to stand between your children and the state. You are as parents, are the only ones who are going to be able to stand there. You had Marita on earlier, who's been doing that for her family since the 2019 guidance. That's what's caused all of her trouble. And her and her husband, Brian, have been standing between the state and their children. And my serious message here is everybody is going to have to do that for themselves. I was thinking about Jo Baker this last week. Some of you may know Jo Baker. She took on Norfolk County Council, who wanted to force their children into school back in the 1950s. In 1961, she won a court case, which really set a marker down, which we've all enjoyed the freedom of. But what struck me about Jo Baker, there was no other organisation around. There was no community of home educators to stand with her. She was a mother who stood by herself between her children and the state, and she prevailed. And I really do think going forward, that is what we've got to be looking for.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you want me to say anything else or whether you want to change tack. Last thing I would say, I think earlier today people were saying, why is it this always keeps coming on at home educators? Well, I'm willing to go there if you want me to, but I'm not just going to jump in there because I've done a lot of talking and I'm going to pour myself a drink of water while somebody asks a question or tells me to go down that road.
Oh, do you want to go get a glass of water then?
I've got it.
Oh, you've
It's
got it.
here.
Okay.
It's next to me.
Okay. Well, the thing is there is something about home education, and the I don't want to call it the right, but you could call it maybe the natural right of parents to to manage how their children are raised, to have some ideas and about how we want our children to be raised. And there's something about when the state comes for that just doesn't sit right. And I think that's why you are still here.
Yeah, there is definitely something that isn't right about that. And I hope most people realize, I know you and Alison are involved in international things. This isn't just happening in these islands, it's happening everywhere. It's not that long since France, from a standing start, um, didn't have a vicious lobby, as we're often called it, like we have in this country. And within a matter of months, we're able to outlaw home education. And this is happening in lots of places. Either the rules are being tightened and things. And when that happens, we end up with a situation where you've got to say, this isn't just our local politicians. It's not just a nasty council. It's not just one party. Look, if you watched Tuesday's debate in the House of Lords on the children's school wellbeing and schools bill, which was all about home education, you will have noticed that one of the person who was getting most frustrated was Baroness Barron. Why? Because in 2022 she took the Conservative schools bill through, and that was mild compared to this one, but essentially it would have brought in many of the same things.
Mm.
And so it isn't just one party we're fighting a mindset. I suspect, I only found out about it a couple of years ago. There is a European group, it's the European conference, I think, of children's ombudspersons. Now, I don't think many people will have heard about that. And I'm not asking the people on the Zoom meeting to put their hands up if they have. That is a meeting, that is a thing where the Children's Commissioner for England, the Children's Commissioner for Wales, the Children's Commissioner for Northern Ireland, and it's a different name, but it's the same job in Scotland. They go off and they talk with other people with that same job from all over Europe. And I suspect there are people doing that right around the world with these job titles. The reason countries have children's commissioners is because the United Nations Charter on the Rights of the Child, which we signed up to in the late 90s, if I'm correct, says every country that signs up to it has got to have one. And so to know what they're meant to be doing, they go and talk to their other people in other countries, and they come back with all this idea. So one of the things the Children's Commissioner has been lobbying for, which affects home educators but isn't directly aimed at us, is a single identifier for every child, which is, I think, still clause 4 of the present bill. Now, that is going to change the landscape of childhood in this country. But she didn't get that idea just from listening to children. She would claim she did. She actually got it listening to people on the international stage who want data sets on what's happening to every child. And so we've got this bigger thing happening. And we are fighting. We're fighting what's happening here, but it will keep coming back because every time it's fallen, other people have been saying, influencing our government, our civil servants, and saying, this is what you need to do. And I don't see any way out of it. I don't know anybody who's talking about withdrawing from the UNCRC, but all we can hope is this whole mechanism collapses one day, and then we might not have these things. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know when it, well, I suspect it will happen one day, but I can't tell you how quick it will be, whether it's in my lifetime, my children's lifetime, or even my grandchildren's lifetime. But it will probably collapse one day. But that is what we're fighting.
What has worried me is that Stephen Morgan has been off to China and talking to people in China about their education system and seemingly very impressed by their education system and wanting to learn from them. And now he's recently been in France. I don't know if he's back from France yet. And that does worry me because it's there's almost this attitude of like, oh, we should be doing this. Oh, well, okay then. And no question about whether it's relevant, whether there's nothing, no looking into research. There's no, it's this whole buying into this message that somehow the state needs to be taking control of children's lives, um, and but without questioning it. And that's really worrying.
Well, a bit nearer home as well, not just the minister, but the guy who heads up a home education department. I think, I don't know if anybody mentioned it earlier on, for the last 3 or 4 years, home education has been a subdivision of the Department of Education's division for counter extremism and out of school education. And the guy who had it up on his LinkedIn, it's public notice, went for several months to Canada as part of Prevent program to share good practice both ways with the Canadian government. So we've got somebody that Britain, heading up the home education stuff, who's been sent by Britain to talk to the Canadian government about Prevent. Once that type of thing is somebody's head, it's hard for them to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're going. But this problem, Julia, hasn't just cropped up since we signed, since the 2000s, let's say, it's been brewing for several decades before that. And I really wish home educators would grasp this isn't just like it used to be. Back in Joe Baker's days, it was probably school teachers who were now running the local authorities department for education, the local council's bit. And somebody said to me today on a different topic, it's very hard to get people to change their mind when their salary depends on them thinking the way they do.
This is so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll never change people's minds. So think about that for politicians. If they wanted to get up in their job and you tell them something that's against what everybody else thinks, you're going to get nowhere. That's why we need a wider way of impacting the public debate. The only way we'll do it is by public debate. But going back to, we know that a lot, for decades, a lot of local authorities have used school teachers as part of their educational welfare team. Now, some of those people over the years have been very good with home educators, and I don't want to do them down. You did a lot of work with, I don't know what her background was, but with the local authority home ed person in Coventry, and it really bore fruit. Now, some of them have been very good, but some of them have been trapped with this professional pride, as if they're thinking, if you're telling me parents could educate their children better than in schools, what have I given my career for?
Yeah.
Have I wasted my life?
Yeah. Now, in my work, I come across people that work for the council and that kind of thing. And I overheard somebody commenting about the 30 hours of childcare that are now being offered from 9 months, the free childcare and all of this, which I'm kind of opposed to, because I think children are too young, and if they're able to stay home with their parents, that's much better for them. And this gentleman was saying, well, it's 30 hours of free childcare. Why wouldn't you? I can't understand why people wouldn't take it up. And I did turn around and say, well, maybe people want to spend time with their children. I couldn't help myself. But also in another setting where somebody involved in our council on the sort of education team was saying that, of course, we all know that the safest place for children is school. And this is the messaging that is coming out, and it is said without a hint of irony, that people actually believe it. And
if you look at the bill documents, and I forget which one it is, maybe Michelle's magical memory might come up with it. It actually says a child in school is presumed to be safe.
Yeah.
And if you've got a government or civil servants or anybody else in the education industry that believes as a notion, and you remember when we had the first protests this year in March in different cities, Mary, my wife, had a conversation with the woman who was a school teacher, and she could not accept that any child was harmed in school. That is the way people's minds work. Now, if you've got that concept, it's very hard. There's somebody who's some home educators might know, who's been campaigning to get the government to count and report on the number of suicides that occur on school premises each year. And the government doesn't want to touch it because it is an admission of failure.
Yeah. Well, we do have on the action group, we have a thread where people can share any negative articles around school that they come across. And we've got quite a significant amount of articles that have been shared there, because we keep them all in one place, because I think this is the thing that we have to be presenting, is that it's not that we want to make schools look bad. It's just that we need to counter that argument. You're backing up that argument. So
I think the biggest thing we've got actually is the growth of home education. because that is families voting with their feet.
Yeah.
Before lockdowns, the original thing that started what we could call refugees, there was some of the early generations, not just Joy Baker, but other people about that time who were the pioneers of what I like to call these days family-based learning, because home
Yeah.
education has become a catch-all phrase, as opposed to, you know, the posh people in the past, their children were taught at home, but not by them. It wasn't family-based. But the pioneers of what we might see as traditional elective home education, there were several of them around, and they did things. It was Joy got prominence because she took the case all the way through and won it. But basically, after them came people like me who were settlers. We'd
Yeah.
see what ground they owned, and we were settlers. But then we've begun to get refugees. And, I don't want to get onto current political things, but it feels very much like now, like many home educators have come to us as refugees, and two things have happened. One is some people have suddenly thought, why didn't I do this years ago? And it's become, they're really glad they found it. But others are just waiting for the government to get its act sorted out so they can go back and get the free education that's suitable for their children that they've been promised. But the first thing, just going on to what's happening in schools, the first driver was bullying, as far as I can work out. People began to look at home education because their children were being bullied in school, and there was nothing the school was prepared to do to stop it. Then we got the rising problem with special educational needs, which is probably the biggest driver. Then there was, I think somebody earlier on said, when parents were able to watch their children during lockdown and listen to their lessons online, they began to see what type of thing they were being taught at school and how they were being taught. And that suddenly said to the parents, this isn't who my child got, and they began to understand it. Since then, we had the whole thing of driving up numbers that they've had. They were talking about every child having to go to school in masks, and some parents didn't want that. Every child vaccinated, that began to drive it. And even the way they've taken away parents' rights with regard to sex and relationships education, that has caused another
Mm.
group of people. Rachel earlier on today was saying, people are saying, we don't want the culture, not just in state schools, but in so many other schools. We don't want it. We want something different for our children. And home education, Lord Frost is exactly right when he said this bill actually will change the footing of education in this country, because the one escape route parents have from a school system, not teachers, not necessarily a school, but a school system and a mentality in schools that is failing their children, is to take them out and home educate them and not have that child forced back into school just because the local authority believes schools are safe and they're the best place for every child. So in
Okay.
that sense, we've got this refugee now, you know, we've got to cope with that. But we need the people who are here for temporary shelter to support us, so that if other people have the same needs in the future, they can come back. I have to say, I know some people who are being let down by the state think these registers will make the state do something. They won't. Every child who's been failed by the state school system is already known to the state.
Yeah, exactly. And they could do something about it now and they're not. So, Randall,
Yeah.
I just want to give you a little bit of feedback because we're coming to the end of your time now. So we had some comments on the live stream. Having seen Randall on many YouTube videos, my kids were so excited to meet Randall at the Birmingham rally. And then
That was nice.
and Fiona's commented about government always says England has one of the loosest and most permissive in the world. Home Ed, Michelle has answered that she likes to counter that we have the gold standard option of home education. It's just a matter of perception.
Can I just come in on that very quickly, Julia? And so I think it's not just the gold standard. I think it's the last barrier
Yeah,
against a global move to force every child into school.
yeah, we're the
Um,
last bastion of freedom.
yeah,
Yeah. Jade has said her kids have been significantly harmed in school and by a state education notion. Her 14-year-old has an 8-year battle due to his ME/CFS, and he's now almost bedbound. His main biggest impact is school. And then I think this is regarding free childcare. New Horizon says a wise old lecturer once said many years ago, there are lots of things in life that are free. A bag of poo is free. You wouldn't want that. So there you go.
well, you know, a lot of things on the internet are free, and
Yeah,
we give our data away and everything, and we don't think about it. So, yeah, that
yeah.
is a very good motto.
Okay, so thank you, Randall, for joining us. Thank you for everything you do. And people can go to your website, No Nationalization of Our Kids. They can find out more. And yeah, we just are thankful. I always think of you as being in the watchtower, keeping an eye out for us and having a look at what's coming. So thank you for that.